I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Man-soo Kim. Today, I'd like to talk about trend of eco-friendly hydrogen ship technology and hydrogen economy plan, or plan for hydrogen economy. Some part of my presentation are rather technical, so you might have some difficulties in understanding my presentation. But I believe these technologies might be the core technologies for the hydrogen economy, and those who are in this industry and those who are interested in this subject might find my presentation very interesting, although these technologies have not been fully commercialized yet. So this can show you what we can do going forward. So this is as if looking into the future. So although my presentation might be a bit too technical, I'd like to ask for your understanding on that matter. This is the content of my presentation. I will start with alternative fuels for marine application, and I will move on to key technology for hydrogen ship, and this will be followed by hydrogen economy plan, and I will conclude my presentation. This is about IML regulation. Well, since Korean Register's Director Song elaborated on this matter, so I would be able to skip this slide. One point I'd like to highlight here is that IML regulation is not an option. This is a must. This is mandatory. So you have no exception whatsoever other than complying with this regulation. In February this year, there was an IML alternative fuel symposium virtually because of COVID-19. And there was an intensive discussion on alternative fuel, as you know all too well. Hydrogen, green methanol, green ammonia, biofuel. These four types of fuels were discussed as an alternative fuels. As you can see on the table, well, those four fuels were discussed because we can make a significant carbon dioxide reduction. And with regard to this, nations around the world are researching alternative fuel options, and some of them have already conducted a demonstration. And Norway, France have the flagship project, and Danish company Maersk is piloting with biofuel, and the United States is testing hydrogen fuel and biofuel. And as for Korea, we are testing and developing various next generation fuel options. As for the alternative fuel options, as for biofuel, well, we have some examples such as HVO or FAME, fatty acid methyl ester, but fuel supply infrastructure is not fully established. And as for methanol, well, you can store methanol in room temperature or in the atmospheric temperature, atmospheric pressure. However, you would consume fossil fuel in producing methanol. As for ammonia, well, it has relatively high volume energy density and it is relatively low price and it is almost zero emission. However, it's seriously toxic. So this has a toxicity issue. As for LNG, well, this is like an interim or transitionary fuel, but it is not really zero emission fuel. So these options are available, and each option has its own advantages and disadvantages. So if you have all put this all together, then you have the basis for producing hydrogen. So we are in a transitioning period to move into the full-fledged hydrogen fuel.
그리고 이거는 이제 하이드로겐 ship에 대해서
This
데몬스트레이션
slide
용기와
shows you the world hydrogen ship technology trends.
이렇게 이제 전 세계적으로
For
있는데
demonstration,
저희가
well, there are various
준비했는데
products and
성공적으로
projects.
코스에 적용하는
So in the far left, this is a hydrogen ship in the German lake. And next to that is a MF Hydra flagship project of Norway. And the next one is Japanese transport vessel, Swiss Frontier. And the next one is a water around of the United States. PAM method was applied. So this is available. And as for H2 port, we can see in the United States and Spain. And in Korea, my university of Pusan National University. But this is to build, the plan is to build this vessel by 2026. This uses PEM-FC and it has the CO2 capture system as well. So this is the plan and which is underway. I'd like to turn to key technology for hydrogen ship. In the far left, you can see the image. With a C-type tank, you can achieve a daily BOR of 0.3% per day. As for this, the insulation is done using polyurethane foam. So as for the LNG using polyurethane foam, this kind of latent heat, saturated temperature, and the BOR properties can be produced for the 300 millimeter thickness of insulation. If you apply this characteristics into liquefied hydrogen, then the insulation thickness should be 3,300 millimeter. So in this case, this is not viable and this is feasible at all. So this is a very fundamental research that was done. And this is what has been researched by NASA, the United States. If we use liquid hydrogen, then we need to get some help from vacuum system. So we have three different scenarios: low vacuum, mid vacuum, and high vacuum systems. In the far left, we have low vacuum system, and there you can see the vacuum pressure is 1,000 torr. As for vacuum, 1 bar is about 760 torr. And if there is no gravity, then 1 millitorr. And good vacuum cleaner has about 650 torr. Then 1,000 millitorr is about 1 torr. So this is extremely low vacuum, not really low, but anyway. Between the outer hull and inner hull, with spray uniform insulation and multi-layer insulation can be introduced, then the conductivity will be about 1 meter W. Then this can be applied into large scale tank. And as for mid vacuum, the pressure is 0.1 to 1,000 millitorr. And the conductivity would be only 1/10 of the low vacuum. And as for filler, glass bubble or aerogel mat can be used as a filler in order to adjust the conductivity or radiant heat shielding. And the last one, high vacuum system. Well, the vacuum pressure would be less than 1.1 millitorr, and the conductivity would go as low as 0.1. So high thermal insulation performance would be fully utilized to ensure conduction and convection heat. So this is suitable for a small sized storage tank. This is the case of Kawasaki. Well, this was covered already. They are researching this 160 1,000 cubic meter liquid hydrogen carrier. The overall trend is more or less the same with LNG, but the temperature is this is to see whether they can work properly if the temperature is about 100 degrees Celsius lower. So it has BOG management system and cargo handling system, as well as the cargo containment system. So these are the areas of potential research going forward.
요거 이제 카본 컨테인먼트 시스템도 두 개가 하나는 저쪽에는 일본의 아까
These are the cargo containment systems. So one of them is for the Norwegian project. The other one is for the Japanese project. You can see for the Japanese project, it is type C tank, and double steel was used, and a double shell vacuum installation structure was introduced. As for settled grass fibered reinforced plastic was used. This was done by a Norwegian IT technology. This is a membrane type. So for CCS, it uses stainless steel. The target is zero boil off. So as for the insulation system, it introduced a double shell vacuum insulation structure and helium circulation cooling system. So these are under the demonstration stage, in demonstration stage or development stage. On the left side table, as you can see, this is the liquid hydrogen carrier cargo operation procedure. It goes through drying, inerting, gas filling, and cooling down. But if you go into details, then slightly different technologies would be incorporated. So if you go through this process, you can see what needs to be done. And there is a re-liquefaction system. And as for the re-liquefaction system, the tank pressure accumulation system should be in place. Then this system should be able to minimize the hydrogen loss. And the emergency system needs to be in place as well because hydrogen can cause explosions if it is not handled properly. And it also needs and requires loading operation system. And this also needs to include the cargo heater, compressor, transport system, because all the pipes need to be vacuum insulated and double pipe needs to be implemented for insulation. Last but not least, a gas combustion unit is also required for cargo handling. The next one is BOG handling or BOG management. Just like the LNG, liquefaction is required, but nitrogen is used for LNG. But in case of hydrogen, cold helium would be used for primary cooling. This is for the re-liquefaction. And there should be another type of research required to minimize the energy consumption of the liquefaction system. As for the bowl of gas, this should be able to be utilized for fuel, or it should be able to be recycled. So this is the diagram that captures that idea. I'd like to turn to the hydrogen economy development plan by the Korean government. As for the hydrogen roadmap, the government's goal is to scale up hydrogen production and to establish industry infrastructure and the supply chain, and then to scale up the supply chain of hydrogen. And the government is also aimed at reducing the cost for production plant as well as for storage and transportation, so that mass transportation will become affordable and available. And the last pillar would be to build hydrogen city with hydrogen fuel cell plant with the fully commercialized hydrogen technology throughout the society. So this is a blueprint set forth by the government.
하이드로겐 이 기기를 보면은 뭐 LNG의 경우에 지금 트랜스포테이션 LNG 스토리지를 하고 저기서
So, well, this is the hydrogen port, how that will look like. So with the LNG carrier, well, this will be transported, this will be stored. As for the LNG, then it goes through the production process. Then in the process, well, we will have hydrogen that will be stored and this will be used. Then it will be supplied to the fuel cell and the cities for the residential consumption. And the various sources of hydrogen will be handled to generate hydrogen, and the carbon dioxide will be captured and used for another purpose or will be stored. So this is the roadmap for hydrogen economy for maritime and fisheries. And this is the expanded view of what I just talked about. As for the ocean renewable energy, we have a wind farm, offshore wind farm and onshore wind farm. We have tidal wave related renewable energy generation. With this, but we can generate hydrogen using water electrolysis. And we can use the hydrogen for the fuel as a fuel for the vessels. Let me conclude. If you take a look at the hydrogen energy value chain in the industry, we have the production, storage, and the vessel, the transportation, which represents transportation, and application. All the key technologies need to be scaled up. So this is a summary of my entire presentation. In order to do this, well, there should be verification, eco-friendly considerations, as well as the government policy framework. All these things need to be taken into consideration in its entirety. My university, in order to facilitate the development of the hydrogen industry, will host a forum in Korea in November. I'd like to invite all of you to the forum so that we would have a better understanding and we can embark on an in-depth research into hydrogen ships. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.